Principal funding for Rights and Wrongs, the human rights television series, has been provided by the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation, the Body Shop Foundation, and the Aaron Diamond Foundation. Globalvision presents a new program on the cutting edge of change. This week, human rights at risk along the new ethnic fault lines in Europe. Fascist hate groups are back. These images are from today's Hungary. The targets of their wrath, gypsies and Jews. From inside Serbia, a peace movement struggles for change while the world threatens military intervention. And our cameras travel on board a flotilla bringing medicine to Cuba.
Do we, in fact, want these people to be starved to submission?
On the Culture Beat, a preview of the Human Rights Watch Film Festival. All this on Rights and Wrongs, the television magazine of human rights. From New York, Charlene Hunter-Galt.
With the Cold War fast becoming a memory, the world seems less threatened now by nations fighting nations. Today, the major conflicts are taking place inside national boundaries, where old ethnic hatreds, fears, and rivalries now stand as the greatest threat to human rights. Words like ethnic cleansing, symbols like the Nazi salute, both relics of Europe's dark past, are now returning. We begin this week with a disturbing video letter from Black Box, an independent production company dedicated to covering the social transformation in Hungary. This is the first of a series of reports from Eastern Europe. It's there where we can track an ethnic fault line with an epicenter currently in the former Yugoslavia. But tremors can be felt along the line, from Poland to Bulgaria to Hungary, once the most liberal society within the Soviet orbit. No more.
If this image of Hungary is new to you, it was a shock to us as well. We never imagined that our new democracy would be threatened so soon by the rise of extreme nationalism and by its attacks against minorities.
I hate the Jews. They are a pretentious, dirty lot. But if you want to hate or despise a race or a nation, you must, at a minimum, know its culture, its language, and its traditions. Because if you are asked, what do you hate about them? What will you say? Just that they are Jews? At the moment, the Hungarian state exists in a wretched condition. It's poor and penniless. 75% of the companies here are in Jewish hands. And we know that the Jews are the best in business.
We want only Hungarians in Hungary, no immigrants. We've had enough of them and all their shady business and robberies and stuff like that. 6 gypsies raped this guy's girlfriend and the police did nothing. I hate all the gypsies. They should go back to where they came from, to India.
Aladar Hordath is a gypsy leader and member of the Hungarian parliament.
5% of the Hungarian population, 500,000 people, are gypsies. They are the greatest victims of the recession. By our estimates, 80% of the gypsies are currently unemployed. In certain regions, unemployment is nearly 100%. More and more, gypsies are looking for shelters in Budapest, hoping to find a better life, or at least a less miserable one.
I have 4 children here. Look around. It's 1 room and a kitchen. I'm bathing them now, but in what? No heat, no bath. Take a look.
Gypsy question? I'd solve it the same way the Americans solve their Indian question. By building reservations, like concentration camps, but without electrified fences.
Last September, in the Hungarian village of Ketigehaza, the house of a suspected gypsy criminal was set on fire. The attackers were arrested, but angry villagers rioted, demanding their release and the expulsion of the gypsy and his family.
Now we have done it, for the first time ever in Hungary. The same will be done in many places in this country, wherever there is garbage like this. It's not an issue of gypsies or brown skin. It's an issue of trash. Trash like this should be exterminated. Until then, life won't get any better. We won't have any law and order in this country.
There are 300 gypsies living in this village. You can't punish all 300. It cannot be done. You're Hungarian. If I have a fight with you, should I go to your home and burn it down, and then go and beat up your neighbor? What kind of a solution is that?
Are you saying that if the police were not here, there would be a war going on?
Yes, absolutely. There will be a war going on here, and we will have more deaths. I am sure of it.
We have children who go to school here. If the village decides to expel this family, we are the ones who will remain. In a month's time, they might take revenge against us. We don't want to die, to have the streets covered in blood. We're human beings. We need a reason to die, not just like this. We don't want trouble. If the family is expelled or their fate is decided, we will still remain here. We were brought up here. We want to die here. We want to bring up our children and send them to school so they can have a better future than us.
1 week later, in the village of Tura, a security guard shot and killed a gypsy man and his female companion, execution style. Their crime, stealing 5 pounds of fruit.
If the interior minister, not today, but right after the burning of the house in the other village, had stood up or gone on television and said, "Gentlemen, in Hungary, taking the law into your own hands is impermissible, regardless of how large the crime," then what happened here would have been prevented, because the security guard would have felt that the government prohibited him from killing.
We are the minority, and there is fascism in Hungary. You just have to go to a soccer match and you'll recognize it immediately. Just take a look at the signs they make there and you'll see it immediately. And after the match they'll say, "Let's go and beat up the gypsies." It's not true that the Interior Minister is unaware of all of this. Is this the great democracy they promised us?
In the past 2 years, extreme nationalism has become a powerful political force in Hungary. The new right first flexed its muscles last September, when more than 40,000 people took to the streets to protest what they saw as the liberal bias of the state-run media. The crowd is chanting the name of István Csurka, a member of parliament and the emerging leader of the new right in Hungary. Although political leaders like Csurka deny any connection with skinhead groups, a leader of the skinheads warmed up the crowd just before Csurka spoke.
My Hungarian brothers and sisters, this beautiful Hungarian gathering, which has continued into the night, should have but one consequence: the dawn of a new spiritual awakening. Now we see clearly, and we cannot be misled anymore. There are many in this country who believe in lies and can be fooled and held back from following the Hungarian way. But we cannot be misled. We have chosen the Hungarian way in full faith and determination.
Three years after the last Soviet troops left Hungary, our newborn democracy is already in danger. Last year, 100,000 of us gathered to demonstrate our opposition to racism and support of democracy.
Ever since I raised my voice against Mr. Churka as one of the founders of the Democratic Forum, as a family man, and as a citizen, I have been verbally abused as a Jew. But in spite of this, I have to thank Mr. Churka and his followers for their abuse, because I learned what it means to be excluded from their country. So I say, with my head held high, that I am a gypsy, an anti-nationalist, and a Jew.
The rain began to fall, and we concluded our demonstration with a song. We wish we could have ended this letter by telling you that democracy has finally triumphed in Hungary, and that the nightmares of the past are behind us. But the truth is that this chapter in our history is still being written.
Joining us this week is George Soros, a native Hungarian and successful financier and philanthropist. The Soros Foundation has offices throughout Eastern Europe and the former Soviet Union and has distributed more than $250 million to support humanitarian programs and new democracies. George Soros, thank you for joining us. How alarming is the kind of thing that we've just seen on the film?
I think it's very alarming. I mean, you don't see it every day. These are isolated incidents.
You were just there.
Yes. I mean, I didn't get this sense of it. You know, the place is quite normal. But it's something very real, and it's very dangerous. I'm very concerned about it.
How do you explain it? I mean, the intolerance, the nationalism, the racism. What's your sense of why it's happening?
Well, look, it's sort of a theoretical explanation. You can look at communism as a universal closed system, and it broke down. And there were people who were opposed to it because it was universal. These were the nationalists. And there were people who were opposed to it because it was closed. These are the Democrats. And so the nationalists use the same methods and the same, they have the same objectives as the communists did in trying to gain political power by exploiting the nationalist feelings. So it's really a very dangerous development. In Hungary, it's the anti-communists who are doing it. In other parts, like in Serbia, it's the ex-communists, Milosevic, who was a communist ideologist, who then became the leader of the Serbian nationalist movement. So you have tremendous forces behind it.
Where do you see it going?
Well, it's a very dangerous situation because you could establish dictatorships based on the principle of nationalism. It's what happened in Germany before the war, in Nazism. So I invented a new word for it. I call them nationalist dictatorships, NADI. So there's the real threat now in this region is the NADI threat.
Well, how do you expect to make and have an impact on this with the millions of dollars that you're pouring into these countries?
Well, I mean, basically, we want to build democracy. Democracy, open society, respect for minorities, You can't really attack this directly very well. You have to do it indirectly through education, through institutions, rule of law. Very important is media. Extremely important is to have a proper information. And when you have television, let's say, in the hands of people who go in this direction, they can dominate public opinion.
So specifically, what are you doing? Are you putting money into media or into groups that will develop alternative media, or what?
Oh no, I mean the foundation is basically involved in developing the institutions of democracy, pluralistic media, for instance, education. Then specifically, we would like to do something, for instance, about the education of gypsies, to enable them to stand up for their rights. Mm-hmm. And we have programs of that kind.
But in Hungary, your efforts to support these free institutions has not been universally well received. What's
well, of course, this group Churka has singled out the foundation for attack because, in fact, we are directly confronting this tendency. So we are engaged in a kind of a confrontation in that respect. But I think that
Are you worried about it?
Well, I'm not worried about it as far as the foundation is concerned. I'm worried about it as far as the country is concerned. But I don't think, you see, that this tendency is going to prevail because the roots of democracy are now fairly firmly established. And the large majority of people do reject it. You had 5,000 people rioting on behalf of this extremist group, and there were 100,000 people marching silently with candles. So I'm very confident that Hungary is going to reject this extremism.
You make a difference between a free society and an open society. Can you briefly tell me?
No, I mean closed society and open society.
Closed, yeah.
No, I mean, open society is basically where nobody has a monopoly of truth, where you have a society not dominated by the state, where you have democracy, market economy, but most importantly, respect for minorities.
And why do you think you can make a difference in doing what you're doing? And are you doing this because you feel that the West or the UN or other nations have failed?
No, I think, first of all, there's not very much difference I can make because I can basically only add money and a certain amount of energy. It's really the people themselves who are doing it, and my pride and joy is to help the people there. You see, so I merely empower them, enable them, and we are making a difference in that way. We did make a difference in moving from communism, and I think we will. I mean, we are engaged in trying to resist this new threat, which is a similar threat to communism.
Well, George Soros, thank you.
You are watching Rights and Wrongs, Human Rights Television. Each week at this time, news and global perspectives you don't see elsewhere.
Our weekly Rights Reel features global human rights reports often given scant attention elsewhere. This week, a humanitarian aid mission busting the blockade of Cuba, shot on home video. We begin in the Caribbean. Abby Hirsch reports.
This is what it looks like when you approach the coast of Cuba by boat. I traveled there in late April with a humanitarian aid flotilla bringing medical supplies for children suffering from an epidemic of optic neuritis, a serious eye disease caused by vitamin deficiencies.
Do we, in fact, want these people to be starved to submission?
John Young organized the Citizen to Citizen initiative. Significantly, it was not blocked by the Clinton administration.
I've never experienced a bureaucracy that maybe isn't behind you, but certainly willing to give every effort to make sure that things work well for us.
Cubans say the epidemic is, in effect, a human rights issue because their physical survival is threatened by shortages caused by the U.S. government embargo of the island.
What we don't want is the medicine to go to Cuba. Fidel Castro.
Anti-Castro Cubans in Key West, Florida, tried to destroy the supplies, protesting the self-styled Flotilla of Hope.
You know, the flotilla is not a humanitarian. It doesn't have any 1% of humanitarian effort. It's a political effort for these people to show solidarity with the government of Castro.
Once in Cuba, government officials welcomed the medical armada, calling for a change in U.S. policy.
Hey, you guys, thank you very much. Thank you.
These are not the usual TV images from inside Serbia. Rights and Wrongs received this tape from anti-war activists in Belgrade to show that the government there does not enjoy monolithic support. Vesna Pasic explains.
You have many civic groups and also political parties who are fighting there for democracy and who are trying to promote the idea of human rights.
This Spring in Serbia Peace in Bosnia demo took place in March. It could not force the Belgrade government to accept a negotiated settlement or deter military options that are being debated in Western capitals. These anti-war activists are often outcasts, says Marlene Nadel of Monitor Radio.
There are death threats constantly. There are dead cats on doors. There are things scrawled on your house. You're called a traitor even by your friends.
Ironically, the embargo against the former Yugoslavia prevented the anti-war movement from receiving a grant to promote peace.
We got a grant to develop conflict resolution techniques, dialogue and negotiation. And that kind of project, you know, for peace organization was put under embargo, which is ridiculous. Even the peace groups could not be helped.
Here, under the Capitol Rotunda, the Congressional Human Rights Caucus celebrated its 10th anniversary, honoring human rights heroes, Guatemala's Nobel Prize winner Rigoberta Menchú, Yelena Bonner, wife of the late Soviet dissident Andrei Sakharov, and the Dalai Lama of Tibet.
My basic attitude always remains optimistic. So I consider that pessimism is the seed of failure.
Rights and Wrongs welcomes your written comments and suggestions. You can also order a transcript for $5 or a video cassette for $24.95 by writing to the Global Center, P.O. Box 311, Radio City Station, New York, New York 10101. Send checks or money orders only. Credit card holders call 1-800-541-2535.
More and more filmmakers are dealing with human rights themes, yet they often find it hard to get their movies shown. Human Rights Watch has organized a Human Rights Film Festival that opens in New York in early May and will then travel nationwide. Danny Schechter has a preview.
The films deal with human rights in the broadest scope. They come from all over the world. From France, the look of others opens our eyes to the lives of the physically handicapped.
Puis il y a des chuchotements, ah regarde celle-là elle marche pas, comme ça. Je me sens gênée. Ils nous fixent, alors on essaie de pas les fixer.
Kiev Blue takes on gay rights in the Ukraine.
But here, even the most progressive doctors think that, well, it's not a criminal action, it is a psychiatric illness.
Swedish filmmaker Suzanne Osten's Speak Up It's So Dark explores the relationship between a neo-Nazi skinhead and his Jewish psychologist. No! African filmmakers target female genital mutilation in Messing Up God's Glory. Other films take us behind the news, like Serbian Epics, a biting satirical profile of the man whose big guns are torturing Sarajevo.
A gdje je komandno mjesto? Reci mi. Dobro, da li možete dobijete moju ženu?
Police brutality against French Algerians is exposed in Secret History, Drowning by Bullets, while inadequate police protection is condemned by the Koreans of Los Angeles in Sa-I-Gu.
같은 날짜에 LA 타임즈지에는 그게 칼라로 돼가지고 확실하게 나왔던 게 그 검었던 그 색깔이 모두가 피로.
In all, the festival presents 60 movies, 38 premieres, and many shorter films that rarely get a screening, like Mama Said, which uses the old Shirelles hit to make a much larger point.
Thank you for watching Rights and Wrongs. We'd like to hear from our viewers and urge you to spread the word about the program. Next week, an interview with former President Jimmy Carter. We close, for your amusement, with an animation from the film festival. I'm Charlene Hunter-Gault. Hello, I'm Charlene Hunter-Gault. President Clinton promised his administration would stand up for human rights. But what's been done? In our next edition of Rights and Wrongs, we'll have a human rights report card on the Clinton presidency.